The aroma of citrus and an inexpensive scent from Walgreens lingered in the house as I returned. My key turned more softly in the lock that night, not due to habit, but a primal instinct. The lights were extinguished, except for the faint glow of the hallway lamp she always left on for atmosphere. The lamp was askew, tilted as if someone had bumped it. Such small details often go unnoticed. Amber never missed such details. I didn't call her name, I didn't hang my coat. Instead, I stood still, my fingers pressing against the banister, feeling the throb in my wrist increase as the silence around me grew louder. The quiet wasn't that of a peaceful home. It was the kind that hides behind furniture, the kind that has a metallic taste. I walked to the kitchen, no music playing like normal, the sink filled, a wine glass on the counter with lipstick smears, red, the one she wore on infrequent nights when she wanted to feel daring. It wasn't expected to be an ordinary Wednesday night. Yet here we were. She mentioned working late for a client she disliked, discussing a rebranding project. From the rear hallway, a faint sound, like held breath between hesitation and excitement, emerged. Amber was home. I don't adhere to beliefs in fate or deities. However, something larger than myself propelled me. I passed through the dining room, past the picture she insisted on framing from our Sedona trip, along the hallway until reaching the guest room door. Locked and closed, a rarity. I knocked once, but there was no response. Then her voice, hurried and high-pitched, almost comically nonchalant. "Babe." I remained silent. The doorknob jiggled. It creaked open, revealing her, hair disheveled, one earring on, mascara streaked as if she had cried or laughed too much, or both. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. She wore my old college hoodie, the one she claimed held your scent, the one she donned when feigning discomfort. "I didn't notice your arrival. You came in unnoticed," I asked. "You were here?" Without stepping back. She chuckled, continued to laugh, seeking a peaceful spot for a nap. "That suits you." My gaze wandered over her shoulder. The room was filled with the odor of sweat and cologne, not yours. Her hair was knotted at the back, and she attempted to smooth it without awareness. Then came the second noise. Movement. Behind her, something stirred. My body froze. My eyes didn't blink. "What's that?" I inquired, gesturing towards the shadow behind her. Amber remained unmoved. She rotated, tossed her head as if irritated, then stepped aside, disclosing a man, bare-chested, still fastening his trousers. He eyed me as if I was inconveniencing him. Amber spoke not a word, only gazed at me with eyes clouded, mouth set in a lopsided smile that wasn't remorse or embarrassment. It was something else, perhaps contempt. "You arrived prematurely," she eventually stated. I acknowledged with a nod. He cleared his throat before saying, "Hey there, buddy." At which point I walked off, taking my time as if my spine was fragile glass that could shatter from any abrupt motion. Amber called after me, her voice still monotonous, as though I'd broken a dish. "It's not what it seems." I continued without turning back, didn't slam the door, didn't cry, merely stood in the center of the living room, hands in my pockets, watching our wedding photo on the mantel subtly sway, as if the ground beneath it had shifted silently. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't explode in anger, didn't yell, didn't throw anything. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed fully clothed, staring at the muted reflection of myself in the black TV screen. I could hear her moving about in the other room, presumably packing his belongings or hers, or perhaps waiting for me to make a spectacle. She often believed I was too tranquil, claiming I lacked emotion, as if that were a blemish she carried. Calm isn't emptiness, it's pressure, the stillness before an earthquake. At around 2 a.m., the door made a squeaky sound. She stood there with her arms folded, looking as if she was uninterested. "Are you going to speak up?" she asked. I turned my gaze gradually. "What do you want me to say?" she inquired, leaning against the doorframe. "Like, are we going to discuss it?" She said dismissively. "Don't pretend ignorance, Ethan. Doing so will only make things worse." She took a seat on the chair opposite the bed, casually crossed one leg over the other, looking completely at ease. The very chair that she had insisted on buying for our room from the vintage store because it complemented the decor. It now resembled a throne for a villain. "I didn't plan it," she asserted. I continued to stare. "I didn't," she emphasized again. "It simply happened." With someone you've obviously done this with on multiple occasions, I stated calmly. My voice trembled not at all. I was astounded by my own composure. She paid no heed to that remark. Instead, she focused on her fingernails. I won't ask who he is, I declared. I don't care about the false stories you might concoct. Amber sighed in response. Every time, you portray yourself as a victim and paint me as a sudden destroyer of your life. I stood up calmly, not hurriedly or menacingly, just enough to feel the blood flow in my legs once more. You consciously chose this path one day, not telling me the truth about working late, but instead welcoming someone into our home. That person wasn't a stranger, Amber. Thank goodness, I said flatly, as if that made it better. You glared now, your sarcasm and condescension evident. This is why. This way you speak to me, as if you're superior. I couldn't help but laugh, not out of humor, but at the absurdity of hearing such a statement from you in this moment. You brought someone into our house, where we keep old Christmas decorations and board games. You had the audacity to act as if I walked in on you doing taxes. Amber rose too now, moving closer. Over the years, you've stopped seeing me, Ethan. You simply stopped trying. I felt like I didn't even matter to you at all. You were the core of my universe. You were a specter, she declared. I craved warmth, not coldness. And there it was, not a declaration of guilt, not an expression of remorse, just a well-prepared explanation she likely rehearsed while fastening her jeans. She announced she was going to bed, brushing past me as if this incident would hold no significance tomorrow, as if this wasn't the shattering of something sacred. I made no attempt to stop her. No call followed after her. I merely stood there, staring at the chair, the antique one, and all I could think about was how aesthetically pleasing it seemed and how repugnant it felt beneath. The next day didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like a replay of the broken. She brewed coffee as she always did, not for me, but for herself. Black, no sugar, with the mug that had a chip on its handle. She detested that mug, claimed it once left a scratch on her lip. But on that day, she drank from it as if nothing was amiss, as if she was trying to show that the imperfection never bothered her in the first place. I was seated at the kitchen table. She avoided eye contact, engrossed in her phone, faintly smiling at some content, swiftly moving her thumb across the screen, her eyes gleaming. Not the vacant gaze she wore during our dinner or movie nights. Instead, it was a genuine, sincere smile, meant for another. I posed a question without glancing up. Are you meeting him again? She didn't flinch. I believe that's no longer your concern. That statement struck like an unexpected slap. Neither an apology nor an end, merely a raw rejection. I inhaled deeply. We're still married, Amber. She set her phone aside for the first time, looked directly at me. And what does that phrase even signify anymore? There it was, her new tactic, flipping the script as if I had breached some unspoken rule of passion concealed beneath resentment and perfume samples. You should have spoken up, I told her, about feeling neglected, about craving more. I did, she retorted. I said it in numerous ways. She had spoken what she truly believed, and I found myself looking at her, not the woman I wedded, but a stranger, one fortified by defense mechanisms and excuses. She wasn't enraged or wounded. Instead, she was finished. This revelation sent chills down my spine more than any affair ever could. With a swift motion, she stood up and reached for her bag. I'm leaving, she declared, not seeking my approval. I followed suit, hastier than intended. Her gaze hardened. Don't attempt to manipulate me now, Ethan. You had plenty of time. That was the instant I understood a harsh truth. She wasn't concealing her guilt, she accepted it. Every distorted thought she used to numb herself at night, she had internalized. She believed I deserved this. Once the door closed behind her, I slumped back into my seat, choosing silence over pursuit or outburst. Instead, I simply gazed at the undisturbed coffee in front of me, still warm with rising steam. In a moment of impulse, I reached across the table, picked up the mug, and let it fall, the sound of its impact against the floor echoing loudly. Divided, not fractured entirely, but cleaved through exactly in a manner reminiscent of our state. Similar to us. The initial individual I confided in was my brother, Nate. Not because we were close, we hadn't been for quite some time, but due to the similarity of our experiences. His ex-spouse, Taylor, had cheated on him with a coworker. In retrospect, Something he said to me then has stayed with me ever since. It isn't the infidelity that shatters you. It is how effortlessly they make it appear. He picked up on the third ring without any greeting. I had not even spoken. She brought him inside the house, I stated. There was silence. Then, "You certain?" I observed him. He adjusted his pants in the guest room. Nate remained silent for a protracted moment. Then, softly, "Are you all right?" "No," I replied emphatically. Far from it. He arrived an hour later. In tow were beer and silence. We settled on the back porch, both fixated on the neighbor's fence as if it held the solution to life's mysteries. I had never envisioned Amber would act in such a way. She used to become agitated if I paid too much attention to the waitress. Nate nodded in acknowledgement. It's characteristic of individuals like her. They disregard the rules when they are the ones violating them. I almost chuckled. She claims I made her feel unseen. He raised an eyebrow. And sleeping with someone within your home was the only way to be noticed? I didn't reply. I couldn't, for I was still attempting to comprehend. I kept searching for sense in her deceptions, trying to convert deceit into some form of misunderstanding. She's altered now, I said, colder, nearly malicious. That's because she's already rewritten the narrative, Nate said. In her mind, you are the antagonist. This way, she doesn't have to feel remorseful. I pondered this, allowed it to hurt. Later that night, after Nate departed, I went to the closet. Half of her clothes were missing, her bathroom drawer empty. She didn't leave for a while in the afternoon. She had left. No note, no farewell, just an absence as sharp as glass. I discovered her wedding ring hidden in a drawer beneath some old bills. She didn't utter a single word about it, but I understood the implication clearly. The following days drifted by in an almost numb state. No sorrow yet, just dealing with the practicalities of loss. I called in sick to work, found it difficult to meet anyone's gaze. My boss, who once teared up during a meeting over a broken coffee machine, said, "Take as much time as you need." I could sense his curiosity. People often do. They crave gossip. Yet I provided none. Amber didn't return home. Neither did she call nor text. It felt like I had been sealed out of her life with a vacuum. Even my parents remained uninformed. My mother, who considered Amber the family's spark, wouldn't comprehend. Or worse still, she would. And I wasn't prepared for that kind of empathy. However, on the fourth day, I spotted her. I went to get groceries as I couldn't bear another meal of cereal. I ambled through the produce section like an automaton. Bananas, tomatoes. My mind failed to comprehend hues or monetary values. And there, amidst the juice aisle, was Amber, chuckling, coiffed, manicured, adorned in the leather jacket I'd gifted her for our 3rd anniversary. Beside her stood him, tall, self-satisfied, with a countenance like a glossy advertisement. His hand rested on her back, too low for mere friendship. Amber hadn't spotted me yet. I could have left, but I stayed, merely observing them as they flirted near the cranberry juice, as if we hadn't lived together. Then she looked my way. Her face fell, not with embarrassment or fear, but annoyance, as though I was an inconvenient former lover she had hoped to steer clear of. Without uttering a word, without even acknowledging me with a nod, she turned back to him, leaned in close, whispered something. They both laughed, and I understood this wasn't remorse. It was malice. I abandoned the shopping cart in the store aisle, exited abruptly, grabbed the steering wheel tightly enough to turn my knuckles white, and unleashed an unexpected primal scream. When the noise ceased, I retreated, wiped my sweaty face, gazed at the dashboard, and murmured, "She's gone." Not in a physical sense, but symbolically. She was no longer the woman I married, never returning to be that person again. The following morning, her mother phoned me. I contemplated her call for a full minute before responding. Her name seemed strange now, Linda, mother-in-law, like an outdated label from a past I no longer recognized. I answered, not due to respect, but out of idle curiosity. "Ethan," she said gently, "can we discuss?" I didn't agree. Instead, I waited for her to continue. She signed. "I understand the changes," she said, trying to remain neutral. She expressed no desire to interfere in the situation. "Amber informed me she relocated, and I was inquiring about your well-being." The term "okay" seemed absurd, yet I lacked the strength to be irate. I'm still alive, I responded. I'm aware she handled this poorly, and I'm not defending her actions. However, I wasn't taken aback. I was stunned, speechless. Pardon me? Linda hesitated before speaking softly. Amber has always been restless, Ethan. Even in her younger years, she would pursue something relentlessly until she acquired it, then forget why she desired it initially. I didn't foresee this. I thought perhaps you were the exception, she said, praising you extravagantly. This caused me to nearly smile. She used to do so. Amber struggles to remain still, Linda stated. She truly can't. She requires chaos, and when there is no chaos, she manufactures it. The words hung heavy in the air, not cruelly, just truthfully. I told her I felt overlooked, and she released a breath that seemed like it had been trapped within her for years. She found you unyielding, and that frightened her more than anything else. The call ended swiftly afterwards. She provided no advice, gave no assurance of Amber's return, didn't even feign understanding. Yet in that instant, her honesty felt more like familial bond than any warmth Amber had extended in months. That night, I gathered my belongings, not to abandon her, but for a breath of fresh air, somewhere devoid of her scent or the sensation of her deceit. I rented a secluded cabin in the countryside, simple and serene, a place people retreat to grieve or vanish. I left her a message, a brief note with 3 words: "You prevailed, farewell." The cabin was utterly tranquil. No internet, no cell service, merely the wind whispering through old timbers and the odd fox howling in the darkness like a mournful violin. I embraced the quietude, wishing for it to consume me entirely. I sought no reminders, no alerts, no pity texts, no insincere concern from those who admired our images, not our lives. I spent the initial day simply existing, without unpacking or engaging in routine activities like shaving or changing clothes. I sat on the front porch, swathed in a blanket, sipping tepid coffee, observing pine needles descend gently, reminiscent of slow-motion rain. In the distance, a branch snapped, causing me to jolt. Betrayal has a way of altering one's instincts. That night, I dreamt of her. Not the transformed Amber, but the old one who played 90s pop loudly and danced carefree in the living room while I cooked dinner. The one who once cupped my face and said, "You make me feel secure." In my dream, she smiled at me. However, her visage morphed into that haughty, frigid expression she gave me at the grocery store. His laughter echoed again in my dream. I awoke drenched in sweat, gasping, with the walls seeming too confining. I needed fresh air and escaped by putting on boots and venturing aimlessly, indifferent to my destination. The trail was partially hidden under snow, causing my breath to condense into vapor. Yet I pressed on. If I walked far enough, ran fast enough, I could distance her from me. Yet that wasn't possible. She permeated everything. The pine trees, reminiscent of our Christmas journeys, the sound of crunching earth, echoing our old porch steps, the throb between each heartbeat. By a frozen stream, I threw a rock into the ice. It split, not shattered, only cracked, a symbol if I'd still been inclined to contemplate. I settled down, arms around my knees, and conceded. I fractured, not with noise or force, just quietly. Tears trickled down, unannounced. No sobs, no pounding the ground. I surrendered, let grief seep from me like yarn from an unaware spool. Because it wasn't just Amber I was grieving for. It was me, the one who believed, the spouse who waited, the fool who observed. When the love I thought genuine faded 3 days into the cabin silence, I switched my phone back on. I hadn't intended to. I scrutinized it for hours, hiding in my bag as if it were a live explosive device. However, my curiosity, or perhaps my masochism, eventually prevailed. A deluge of messages poured in, like water from a damaged dam. "Nate, let me know if you need anything, buddy." "For real?" "My superior, don't worry about the reports. Take care of yourself." "My mother, I don't know what happened, but I love you. Please call." But one message stood out. From Amber, just 2 words. "You home." No apology, no explanation, no regret. I fixated on it for a considerable duration, my thumbs twitching, my mind fraying. Every fiber within me urged me to delete it and cast the phone into the stream without looking back again. Yet another part, the frail, pitiful one that still yearned for the way she used to whisper my name in the dark, kept gazing at it. Then it buzzed once more. "Amber?" I left something at the house. Need to retrieve it. There it was. Not, can we discuss things? Not, are you all right? Merely logistics. Cold. Flat. Transactional. I chose not to reply. I didn't need to. She arrived to collect whatever items she required, having previously taken the essential ones. I remained an additional night at the cabin, not out of desire, but due to the discomfort of occupying a place she had touched. I envisioned her wandering through the house as a stranger, keys jingling, expression vacant, perhaps taking a sweater, foolish book, or maybe a pair of earrings I had given her years ago. In my mind, she did it all silently, like a thief who felt entitled. And indeed, she may have felt that way. That's what hurt the most. Amber didn't just deceive me, she erased me. By the fourth day, I returned to the house. The roads were wet, the sky was gray, and the radio was off. Upon arrival, the porch light was on, the door was open, and inside she was absent once more. No note, no message. Yet there was a difference. She didn't merely take items, she left something behind too. On the kitchen table, a small cardboard box lay. Inside her wedding ring, a photograph of us from the beach trip where I bore her across the tide, and a note scrawled in her precise handwriting. No need to complicate things. That was all. No signature, no emotions. Merely a final barb concealed as an ending. And for the first time since it started, I felt nothing. No rage, no sorrow, just understanding that I hadn't opened the box for days, just left it on the table, reminiscent of a crime scene. Her ring perched atop the photo, obscuring my face. The note, edged with curls from the air conditioner, twisted back and forth. Whenever I passed by, I'd cast a glance, then quickly look away. Gaze too long, it might drag me back to the man who still cared. Yet, I wasn't that person any longer. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I started cleaning. Not out of fury, not as some overused emotional purging. I cleaned because the house seemed tainted. Every item bore her traces. She had always claimed the blankets. The bookshelf stacked with her unread mystery novels remained untouched. Her half-empty makeup drawer from the bathroom still stood there. Bag after bag, I filled them as if disposing of a bygone era. Empty wine glasses were discarded. The throw pillows she insisted on were discarded for their looks, perhaps. That hallway quote, "Love grows here," was tossed away without a moment's hesitation. I packed up what belonged to her. No malice, no venom, just precision. It felt like a medical procedure, no longer requiring anesthesia. Halfway through discarding an old pair of her slippers, I stumbled upon her plain black journal tucked between the couch cushions. No lock, no embellishments. I knew I shouldn't delve into it. But of course, curiosity won over. Inside were incomplete poems, to-do lists, and then pages written during the supposed reconnection phase. Her handwriting seemed more aggressive on these entries. He doesn't notice me. I stand right before him, yet he is always somewhere else. Occasionally, I ponder if my absence would go unnoticed for a week. I yearned to be desired, not merely endured. The word tolerated left a bitter taste. She spun herself a tale so often she convinced herself, portraying me as the indifferent spouse while she assumed the role of the lonely wife, justifying her infidelity. I closed the journal and tossed it into the box with her other belongings. Let her keep her narrative. I knew the truth, that I offered her all I had and she misconstrued my patience for disinterest, misinterpreted my loyalty as apathy, misjudged comfort as being confined. When I secured the final box, I affixed a note on top. You were observed. You were cherished. You were never owed retribution in kind. I placed it by the door. She could collect it whenever she wished, but she couldn't take me with it. A week went by, then another. The box remained untouched by the door. I thought she might drop by, perhaps in haste between brunch engagements or the illusion of a new life she was attempting to construct. However, there was nothing. No message. Not a call. Instead, I'm outside, or could you leave it on the porch? Nothing significant. That box, though, had turned symbolic, a cardboard tombstone of our marriage. One night around 11 p.m., the doorbell echoed. I knew it was her without checking. Upon opening the door, there she stood, devoid of makeup and draped in an oversized hoodie that didn't belong to me. "Hey," she said. I remained silent. Her gaze flickered towards the box. Mine? I retreated silently, allowing her room. She hesitated, her eyes fixed on it, as if it were an emotional minefield she wasn't certain how to disarm. "Did you read my journal?" she inquired. I crossed my arms. Yes. She nodded slowly. Then you understand. No, I replied flatly. I don't really. She seemed taken aback, perhaps even disheartened. You wrote about feeling invisible, I persisted. But I was always there, Amber. Every night, every weekend, every mundane Sunday when we went grocery shopping and you'd secretly stash snacks in the cart thinking I wasn't looking. That's not the same. She didn't interrupt me. You can't alter these words. She tentatively entered, barely, her hands buried in her hoodie pockets like a child. I didn't arrive for a confrontation. Why have you come then? She hesitated. I'm unsure. A grenade was tossed into our lives, yet no concern was shown for my survival. And now, you're uncertain? She glanced at the floor, then back at me. I thought it would bring relief, she barely uttered. Being with him, leaving, starting anew. I believed it would feel like liberty. Does it? I inquired. Her silence was her response. You didn't crave freedom, I said. You sought attention, and you didn't consider the consequences. Amber's lip quivered subtly, but she held back the tears. Can I ask you something? She asked. Of course. Was any of it genuine? Us. That question struck me harder than anticipated. I gazed intently into her eyes. It was real to me, every moment. Without waiting for her reply, I grabbed the box and gave it to her. Take what's yours and leave. She didn't bid farewell. She held the container as if it were heavier than cardboard and remorse, then exited. No backward look, no final entreaty, just footsteps disappearing into the driveway, a car door shutting, and then quiet. That was the actual conclusion. Not the infidelity, not the argument, not even the instant I spotted her with him in the grocery aisle. No, the real end was the door closing behind her, softly like the last page of an unwanted book you had to finish. I remained on the living room floor afterwards. There was no music, no lights, only me and the reverberation of all we once were. It wasn't sorrow anymore. It was the void created by absence. And yet, in that silence, a tiny but potent feeling emerged. Not hope, not forgiveness, but a void, a space no longer tainted by deception or tension, nor the unrelenting feeling that I was gradually forfeiting something indefinable. I surveyed the room thoroughly. Indeed, there were no remnants of her plaid blankets, no lingering scent of her perfume, and no abandoned wine glass on the couch. It had become my domain now, exclusively mine. The following day, I prepared coffee in the cracked mug she usually eschewed. It didn't hurt my lip as I sipped. I sat on the porch, welcoming the sunlight onto my face for the first time in weeks. True birds chirped outside, unlike the cheap Etsy decals that once adorned our walls. A squirrel scampered across the lawn with more determination than I'd shown in months. I was unsure of what lay ahead. Divorce seemed imminent, a protracted process involving forms, signatures, and lawyers feigning empathy. However, within me, there was already a subtle closure. The door she had exited would remain shut and locked. A week later, I signed the divorce papers. The documents came in an unadorned envelope, handed over by a courier who avoided eye contact. There was no accompanying letter or note. Instead, there were blank pages, signed contracts, and an air of finality. She had already affixed her signature, Amber Grace Delaney, with a newfound sharpness, a departure from the flowing strokes of someone in love. Instead, they mirrored the decisive lines of a businesswoman closing a deal. I stared at my signed name, the blank space that followed, and then let go. Pen met paper, and it was done. There were no tears, no long moments of contemplation, just ink, silence, and then movement. I returned the pages to their envelope, sealed it, and that was it. The marriage was over. 6 years condensed into a manila folder. After the courier departed, I stood by the window for a while. Life continued outside. Children played on scooters, lawns were mowed, dogs barked in the distance, unaware of the ending that had just transpired within these walls. And I understood something then. Amber did not break me. She didn't emerge victorious. Indeed, she deceived. She betrayed. She transformed her remorse into daggers and entombed them deeply. Yet she didn't annihilate me. She endeavored, perhaps not intentionally, but impulsively, irresponsibly, unreservedly. And for a while I allowed it. I endured as she made me doubt everything that defined me, everything I offered. However, I persist. I have grown stronger, clearer, superior. I resumed my jogging routine once more, the way I used to prior to the burden of our relationship, overshadowing everything that constituted my identity. I reached out to old companions. I prepared authentic meals. I transformed the spare room into a reading nook with an old armchair I procured from a flea market. Amber has become a relic, not a hurt, not a specter, just something that transpired. I do not grant her my forgiveness, maybe never will, but I no longer shoulder it. To anyone who reads this, if you are amidst it, if your world is crumbling under the weight of another's selfishness, listen to me when I say it will cause excruciating pain, but it will cease, and you will still be standing, whole, wiser, alive. Appreciate your attention.